9 teams win, 9 teams lose. And yet, like, one of those winning teams is mathematically exiled from the top 8.
Yeah, which is just wild.
It's an anomaly that completely breaks your brain the second you look at the ladder. And it sits right at the heart of this massive stack of highly specific sports data that you've shared with us today.
Right, and it's a fantastic data set.
Oh, absolutely. So our mission today is unpacking the opening round of the AFT Dice League AFL Season 13. And this is dated July 1st, 2026.
Which is an important detail.
Definitely. But we need to get one thing straight immediately, right?
Yeah.
We aren't looking at human athletes sweated on a field here.
No, not at all. We are looking at a simulation.
Right, exactly. A tabletop environment governed entirely by probability, algorithmic modifiers, and, dice rolls.
But somehow, the math has generated this story of early triumphs and epic collapses.
And mathematical cruelties.
Oh, for sure. It feels in some ways more dramatic than real life.
It really does. Why is that?
Well, it's the beauty of, high variance probability curves. When you take the rigid traditional rules of Aussie rules football and filter them through a dice-based engine...
You get a lot of chaos.
Exactly. You don't just get a list of scores. You get this really fascinating look at how simulation algorithms attempt to replicate momentum.
Right.
And round one always sets the tone, obviously, but a macro view only tells you half the story.
You have to dig deeper.
Right. Taking a closer look at the quarter-by-quarter breakdowns reveals the hidden mechanics of momentum in this league. It shows how these virtual matches are won, lost, and sometimes completely bottlenecked by random number generation.
So if you're ready, sit back. We're going to extract the most important nuggets from the numbers you've handed us.
Let's do it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to start with the absolute heartstoppers and the agony of the final quarter.
The dramatic ones.
Yeah, because the simulation engine threw out some wild extremes right out of the gate. So the tightest game of the entire round happened at the virtual Gabba. Brisbane edging out GWS 106 to 105.
A 1-point margin.
Literally a single point. But the internal logic of how we arrived at that 1 point, that's what caught my eye.
The momentum swings were massive.
Insane. GWS looked down and out early on, but then they hit this massive probability spike in the third quarter. They exploded for 40 points in Q3 alone.
Leaving Brisbane in the dust.
Right. Brisbane was stranded with only 16 points for that term.
Yeah. And that 40-point spike is a classic outlier event in a dice system. In a standard distribution model, you'd expect a team's scoring output to hover around a median, right, based on their stats.
Sure.
So a 40-point quarter suggests that GWS didn't just string together favorable rolls. They likely hit a sequence of maximum output modifiers.
Like what tabletop gamers call consecutive critical successes.
Exactly. Consecutive crits. While Brisbane's algorithm just went completely cold.
But, and I have to push back a little here, is this just pure isolated randomness? Because comparing this to a marathon, it's like GWS celebrated victory a mile before the finish line.
Right.
Because in the fourth quarter, GWS completely collapses. They score a measly 14 points, while Brisbane roars back with 34 out of nowhere.
It's a huge swing.
Yeah. So my question is this a brilliant tactical adjustment by Brisbane in the fourth, or just a catastrophic mental breakdown by GWS, like mathematically speaking?
Mathematically speaking, it's about resource management. Sophisticated sports simulations don't treat the fourth quarter the same way they treat the first.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they introduce cascading probability tables based on stamina or pressure. When GWS poured on 40 points in the third, the engine likely required them to expend heavily from a finite resource pool.
So they basically burned themselves out.
Pretty much. By the fourth quarter, their algorithm was running on depleted modifiers, which drops their potential scoring ceiling significantly.
Wow. So Brisbane didn't really make a tactical adjustment. Their reserves were just intact.
Precisely. GWS was rolling with heavy debuffs, while Brisbane triggered a late-game surge mechanic.
It creates the illusion of a heroic comeback.
Right, but it's really just a lesson in the code. And, I want to bring in 2 other tight matchups to show this wasn't an isolated phenomenon.
Okay, let's hear them.
So Richmond beat the Western Bulldogs by 11 at the MCG. But they largely survived a huge Bulldogs comeback because Richmond banked a massive 36 points in Q1.
Oh, so they front-loaded their probability spike.
Exactly. And then you compare that to Port Adelaide edging St Kilda by 9 at the Adelaide Oval.
Right, I looked at that one.
It was a total arm wrestle from start to finish. Completely flat variance, no 40-point explosions, no 14-point crashes.
So the takeaway here is A strong start can save you, like it did for Richmond.
Yes.
But falling asleep at the wheel in Q4, like GWS did, I mean, that is just fatal.
A tabletop simulation doesn't care about the narrative. If your modifiers drop to 0, you lose.
Period. Okay, well, let's transition from the closest margins to the absolute largest, because I want to examine what total dominance looks like in the AFT.
The variance there is so much wider.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Geelong's massive 41-point Q3 was the key differentiator there. Both teams were scoring heavily, but Geelong found that higher ceiling.
And we saw other big winners exploiting those high ceilings too.
Right. West Coast dominating Carlton by 38 at Optus Stadium.
Oh yeah, heavily front-loaded.
Insanely front-loaded. They had an 89-point first half.
They basically triggered all their offensive modifiers before the break.
But then look at Fremantle thrashing Hawthorn by 46.
The Fremantle data is so strange.
It really is. Because I noticed they actually had a terrible start. Like, they only scored 8 points in Q1.
Which looks like that Gold Coast level suppression we just talked about.
Yeah. But then they completely flipped the script in the second half. They dropped 39 points in the third and 38 points in the fourth.
Which moves us perfectly from raw scores to, like, the psychological narrative of the quarters.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because why do these teams suddenly turn it on or turn it off?
Well, there's this concept of false dawns in sports simulations.
Okay, what does that mean? Let's look at the North Melbourne versus Adelaide game. North Melbourne defeated Adelaide 134 to 107.
Right. But look at Adelaide's incredible start.
39 points in Q1. I mean, they looked unstoppable.
They really did. And then they completely collapsed, scoring only 16 in Q2 and another 16 in Q3.
So what happened? How did they drop from 39 to 16 back-to-back?
Well, North Melbourne methodically ground them down. They put up 40, 33, and 41-point quarters. In a lot of these engines, there's an adaptability or coaching stat.
Oh, so the algorithm learned.
Exactly. If a team has high adaptability, their engine slowly maps and counters the opponent's early offensive spikes. North Melbourne essentially solved Adelaide's offense by the second quarter.
That is fascinating. But wait, we're seeing all these wild third quarters across the board.
Yeah, the data's full of them.
Right. Collingwood beating Sydney 97 to 83 at the SCG. It was close until Collingwood went completely supernova in Q3 with 42 points.
Yeah.
And we had Geelong with 41, GWS with 40, Fremantle with 39. So what is happening in the locker rooms at halftime?
Mathematically speaking, you mean?
Yeah, is the third quarter statistically the most volatile quarter in this league?
It is highly likely there's a hard-coded halftime reset mechanic.
A reset? How so?
Well, running continuous probability checks without a break can lead to a snowball effect.
Yeah.
One team gets a slight advantage and it just compounds.
Right, the rich get richer.
Exactly. So to prevent that, the engine likely zeroes out temporary momentum buffs at halftime. It basically unlocks the algorithms for a brief period before the late-game stamina debuffs apply.
Wow. So when Collingwood drops 42 points in the third, it's not a great tactical whiteboard session. The simulation just lifted the constraints.
Right, and their raw offensive stats operated at maximum efficiency.
Okay, so we've looked at all these isolated spikes, the blowouts, the mid-game awakenings, but all of this funnels down into the cruel reality of the ladder.
The inescapable sorting mechanism.
Yes, because this ladder shows exactly why these margins matter so much.
Yeah.
Can you break down the winners versus losers paradigm for us?
Sure. So 18 teams played. 8 teams sit in the top 8.
Right, standard rules.
Melbourne is crowned the minor premier with an absolutely absurd percentage of 297.73%.
Which makes sense after what they did to Gold Coast.
Exactly. And Gold Coast holds the wooden spoon at an abysmal 33.59%.
But the middle of the ladder, that's where the craziest cat sits.
The Brisbane anomaly.
Yes, because 9 teams won and 9 teams lost, right? But only 8 teams fit in the top 8.
Yeah, the math is unforgiving.
Brisbane fought tooth and nail for that gritty 1-point win against GWS, and their reward, they are sitting outside the top 8 in 9th place.
Yeah, their percentage of 100.95% kept them out.
I mean, what does this all mean? Is it fair that Brisbane gets a thrilling win and is basically grouped with the losers, while Port Adelaide, who won by 9 points, gets 8th place?
It feels wrong.
It does? Doesn't this actively punish teams for having competitive, evenly matched games?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it exposes the ruthless mathematics of sports ladders. Percentage is the ultimate tiebreaker.
But the system doesn't care that Brisbane staged a massive comeback.
Not at all. It only sees that Brisbane's defensive structure leaked 105 points. The algorithm identifies superiority, not narrative drama.
So a team that suppresses an opponent and wins by 40, even against a weak algorithm, is just mathematically superior in the eyes of the code.
Utterly indifferent to the struggle. And look who is right behind them in 10th place.
GWS, the team Brisbane actually beat.
Right. GWS is sitting there with 99.06%. They are mathematically breathing right down Brisbane's neck, despite actually losing to them.
That is just brutal. Every single dice roll matters for that percentage.
Even when the win probability is already at 100%, teams are still banking percentage to avoid this exact anomaly.
Well, wrapping up this deep dive, I want to thank you for supplying such a fascinating data set.
It's been incredible to look through.
We've seen the danger of relying on a single good quarter, the systemic dominance of Melbourne, and of course the absolute heartbreak of Brisbane's 9th place victory.
It really highlights the mechanics of simulation.
Before we go, though, I know you have one final lingering question for the listener to ponder long after we sign off.
I do. Looking at these massive quarter-to-quarter score disparities, like GWS going from 40 points in one quarter to 14 in the next, or Adelaide dropping from 39 to 16, how much of this dice league is driven by sustainable skill and strategy, and how much is just the chaotic, unpredictable role of psychological momentum? When a team completely vanishes in a single quarter, does the fault lie in the coach's system or just the invisible hand of chance?
Wow. Does the fault lie in the system or the invisible hand of chance? I love that. Keep analyzing those numbers, keep questioning the math, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.